Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little bit later in the show, we will talk about the Cavs with Cavs beat reporter Chris Fedor. We'll also look at the beginning of the NBA playoffs, but we will talk Browns football and the Browns getting ready for phase 2 of the offseason. It will be virtual for the Browns. So virtually, we will bring in Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe. Dan, when you look at a virtual type of OTAs, Browns are used to it, so it's not that drastic of a change from what happened a year ago.
Yeah, this is something that they're used to, especially the veteran players that have been through all this before. You know, they'll have some rookies still in town from rookie mini camp doing some stuff in person, but, you know, this is something that this coaching staff, these players, they know all about. They're going to be able to handle it just fine and get the work they need to get done. It'll be interesting to see, though. You know, there's some other teams where we're seeing some numbers kind of up in OTAs, maybe a little higher than expected. The Browns, a little complicated of a situation with J.C. Tretter actually on the roster, the NFLPA president. But it'll be interesting to see what happens as this spring goes along, to see if more players kind of get bored sitting at home and trickle back to Cleveland.
Now, one of the things everybody has been excited about, things that the Browns have done, a lot of anticipation for the season. So Pro Football Focus has ranked the quarterbacks. They've got Mahomes 1, Brady 2, Aaron Rodgers 3, Russell Wilson 4. Not that big of a surprise. Then you got Watson, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Matt Ryan 9, and Baker Mayfield 10. Baker at that spot doesn't surprise me necessarily. Behind Matt Ryan, not so sure I'd rather have Matt Ryan at this point in his career. But what do you make of Baker Mayfield as, you know, quote unquote, a top 10 quarterback?
I think it's really interesting to see him ranked that highly. And I think there's a lot of flexibility there in those rankings. I've never been the biggest Matt Ryan fan to begin with. So, you know, I wouldn't argue if you put Baker Mayfield in front of him. But, you know, really with a lot of those guys, it's just more of, you know, Lamar Jackson has won an MVP. Josh Allen really took huge steps forward last year and led his team to the AFC Championship game. And that's just sort of what Baker is missing. You know, Matt Ryan has been to a Super Bowl and won an MVP. Those are the things Baker's missing, and he might check off some of those boxes this year. If the Browns go deep into the playoffs, if he puts up big numbers and leads this offense, I think this is more an indication of kind of what Baker might be on the verge of becoming as opposed to what he actually is right now.
The other thing is I'm very curious to see his second year in the system. Kevin Stefanski kind of now has a feel for him. The way they worked together really the second half of last year and into the playoffs was pretty impressive. And I think it's going to continue to grow and expand and get even better. Do you think it's fair to expect that?
I think it should absolutely be expected, because we saw what happened during the bye week last year. They had that bye week right in the middle of the year. I mean, I think those players were ready. I think that's a big piece of why they lost that home game to the Raiders. But the Browns took advantage of that, and they really did remake some things offensively. And we didn't get to see it right away because the weather was really bad in a few of those games. But when they got to Jacksonville, Tennessee, they got into December, weirdly enough, playing in better weather in December than they did, you know, after the bye week at the halfway point. We got to see what this offense was supposed to look like, and they threw in some more play action stuff for Baker. They rolled him out a little more. This coaching staff did a great job of just rethinking this offense at the bye week, sort of like Tampa Bay did with Tom Brady and the Bucs. They used that late bye week. And I think that's the most encouraging thing. If you're looking for a year 2 leap, it's this coaching staff took about a week and a half to kind of get things in order. Now they're going to have a whole off season. Everybody's back. They know exactly what they're working with. There's a lot of reason for optimism there.
The other thing is the last time Baker Mayfield was in the same offensive system for 2 years was his second year at Oklahoma, his senior year. We know what he did that year. He won the Heisman. So, you know, there are those kinds of things that he can do when he is familiar and comfortable in a system.
And I think Baker is sort of a trust guy when it comes to his receivers a little bit too. You know, he will throw the ball to anybody if you're open, but I do think there are certain guys that he builds a trust with and builds a rapport with. Jarvis Landry is certainly one of those guys. We've talked about Rashard Higgins so much, you know, on this show, in this city. Everybody loves Rashard Higgins. It's because of that connection with Baker. You know, he's going to have a better connection with Austin Hooper. You hope that maybe he and Odell Beckham will kind of finally find that connection. So it's not just another year in the offense or the coordinator or the coach. It's having some of these weapons again, some of them going back to his rookie year where he's really built a great rapport, and he's going to be able to continue to work with those guys.
It's important to note PFF is kind of the analytics-driven website. Baker had the second highest ranking second half of the season. From that bye week on, he was the second highest ranked quarterback in the NFL.
And they're a site that really watches every throw, and they try to figure out what's supposed to happen on every throw. So it's not just, okay, did that ball get completed? It's not just what we see, the raw data, the raw stats. It's, they're watching the tape. And, you can argue a little bit with PFF's grading system here and there and whether they know what's supposed to happen on a play or not. But when a guy is ranked that highly, at least puts you in the ballpark of like how he was playing relative to his peers. And I'm not surprised, because especially starting in that Jacksonville game all the way through that divisional loss to Kansas City, Baker played really great football.
Yeah, and it's one thing to say he's playing really well. There puts some quantitative, decision-making behind it. All right, PFF also ranked the running backs, and it's kind of interesting. Browns, two of them, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, both in the top 10. So it went Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, Christian McCaffrey. Nick Chubb was 4th. Kareem Hunt was 10th. Kamara Jones, Barkley, Carson, Jacobs were 5 through 9. But Browns running backs, 2 of the top 10. Again, not a surprise.
No, not at all. And I think the craziest thing is if you really think about Kareem Hunt and what he could be doing now, if he were still in Kansas City or if he had landed somewhere where he was the featured back, he'd sort of be that all-around back that teams love. And you might hear his name mentioned with a Christian McCaffrey as an elite all-around player, his ability to catch the football and run the football. But at the same time, he sort of ended up in a perfect situation in Cleveland because he doesn't have to carry the ball 15, 20 times a game. He can line up in the slot. He can do a bunch of different things. And I really think this coaching staff now with a season under their belt, the ability to kind of take that next step offensively, they're going to throw some Kareem Hunt wrinkles in there. And they made that commitment to him contractually last season. I think they see Kareem Hunt as a big, big piece of this offense. I'm not surprised that he's still sitting there in that top 10 of running backs in the league.
No, and the other thing is keep in mind, no training camp, no preseason. The Browns couldn't get as creative as they probably wanted to with both Hunt and Chubb on the field together. The other thing about it is, if you're Kareem Hunt, this is extending your career. Be productive and don't take the beating.
It's doing all of that stuff for him. And, when the Browns brought him in, when John Dorsey took that chance on him, I kind of called him an overqualified Duke Johnson. And that's sort of what he's become. He's doing all the things that everybody always wanted Duke Johnson to do, except he's doing it at a top 10 running back level. And if you just go back to last year, some of the catches he made a one-handed catch against Washington that was, at the time, maybe a catch of the year candidate, made a tough catch against Indianapolis in that win. This is a guy that can do so many different things. He runs so hard. And even if they didn't figure out how to use those two together, what they really figured out is, we're just going to run Nick Chubb into you for 3 quarters. And then Kareem Hunt's going to come at you fresh in the 4th quarter and finish off football games.
Yeah, and think about that. It's a constant 4-quarter, 60-minute barrage of guys that like to run physical and aren't, they're not going to shy away from contact.
Yeah, exactly. And Kareem Hunt, really one of the hardest runners we've seen. He makes every run kind of look hard. Nick Chubb kind of makes every run look easy. Kareem Hunt manages to make every run look hard because he runs so hard. He loves that contact. He's not afraid to back down from him. And then he'll make an athletic play like he did at the goal line. And I think it was against Philadelphia when it seemed like he leaped in from the 5-yard line and looked like Michael Jordan. He's got that sort of ability.
Dan Labbe and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we continue talking Browns football. We'll take a look at how Nick Chubb ranks in the running back draft class of 2018 that he was a part of. We'll also take a look at some national power rankings and where the Browns sit. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. We're talking more Browns football. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com, Dan Labbe. And Dan, we mentioned the 2018 draft class, and this is why people say don't draft running backs really, really high. So round one, second pick was Saquon Barkley. We know he's coming off a serious knee injury. Round 1, 27th pick, Rashard Penny. Round 1, 31st pick, Sony Michel. Round 2, 35th pick, overall, Nick Chubb. Second round, 38th pick, Ronald Jones. Second round, 43rd pick, Kerryon Johnson. Second round, 59th pick, Darius Geis. So those are the guys that were picked pretty high, and you could make an argument that Nick Chubb has been the best because he stayed the healthiest.
Yeah, Nick Chubb has definitely been the best running back in that class. Now, Saquon Barkley is probably still the most talented, and that rookie year that he put up over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, he is that dual threat back, but he's got to stay healthy, and he's coming off that ACL. We'll see how he comes back from that. But, you know, Nick Chubb has been the most productive and the best running back from that class. And really the egregious ones are Rashad Penny going ahead of him. He's not even starting in Seattle right now. And then Bill Belichick taking the wrong running back from Georgia and Sony Michel, who's been okay, but certainly hasn't been Nick Chubb. And I think Chubb in this scheme, it was made for him. And then you put this offensive line in front of him, his ability to break long runs, it's been unbelievable. It might go down as one of the Browns' best draft picks. It's certainly since they came back, but maybe, you know, we might look back on this someday and say it was one of their best picks of all time.
When you look at it, do you fully expect them to start talking extension with somebody like Nick Chubb? And again, I mention that because running backs typically don't get paid. Analytics-driven things, they don't pay them. I can't imagine the Browns not trying to pay Nick Chubb.
It would be a really difficult sell to the fan base to not pay Nick Chubb. And I understand you can't make decisions based on that. But there is an element of this where if you decided you weren't going to extend Chubb, you'd have to go to ownership and explain it to them because this is ultimately a business. They do ultimately want to make some money. I think you can extend Chubb and do it safely. Now, there's a couple options. They could let his contract expire and they could use the franchise tag if they want to. Sometimes that can create a little animosity. But if you did it this season or this offseason, you could give him, say, that 4-year, somewhere in the range of $50 to $60 million that we're seeing guys like Joe Mixon, Derrick Henry get. And you can really front load that thing and give yourself flexibility, you know, in the back half of that contract if you want to move on, pay for those prime years and then start making decisions year to year. I'll say this about Andrew Berry. He's his own man. So he's not going to be, and I think we've seen this over and over again, he's not going to be put in that analytics box. Yes, he's informed by it. Yes, he's driven by it. Paul DePodesta is running things in the organization as well. But Andrew Berry is going to do what he believes is best for the football team. And I find it hard to believe that you would look at Nick Chubb and say it's not best to give him a few years and lock him up to a nice little extension.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. And the important thing to remember, there is no fifth-year option because he was not a first-round pick. That fifth-year option only occurs with first-round draft picks. ESPN Power Poll rankings. Chiefs 1, Buccaneers 2, Bills 3, Rams 4, Packers 5, Ravens 6, Browns 7. And again, I know we get carried away with this, but it's very interesting. The Packers are that high given the murky future of Aaron Rodgers. And the Rams, I know they have Matthew Stafford now, but they have Matthew Stafford now.
Yeah, you're banking a lot on Matthew Stafford. It feels like those power rankings are really sort of more of a reflection of last year and not having seen. Because when you look at the teams that are ahead of the Browns, they were teams that did accomplish things last year. Like the Ravens beat the Browns a couple times last year. The Packers were in the NFC Championship game. Now the Rams, they obviously lost the same weekend as the Browns. They still have a great defense. Obviously, they've had some losses in Troy Hill and John Johnson. That benefits the Browns because not only did the Rams lose those guys, but the Browns picked them up. It's just banking on what Matthew Stafford is. Was he a guy that just put up big numbers in a bad situation in Detroit? Or is he going to be elevated by going to LA and being a guy that can lead a team to a Super Bowl? I think he's talented. He's a guy I've always liked, but I don't know. I don't know if you can just sit here and say, oh, yeah, that guy could take a team to a Super Bowl because we just haven't seen him win at that level yet.
Yeah, and it also seems like it's very highly weighted towards established quarterbacks, Mahomes, Brady, Rodgers. Everybody's kind of in love with Josh Allen after the season he had. So ESPN ranked the players that benefited the most from the draft for each team. For the Browns would be Myles Garrett, and that's not a surprise, I don't think.
No, it's not, because coverage, right? That's what the Browns really focused on. They got Greg Newsome. They made their coverage better. In free agency, I know this was about the draft, but they focused on coverage in free agency too. They added a lot of pieces. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is going to help them in coverage. And that's going to give Myles Garrett a little bit more time to get home. And I think that's a big thing. That's always the debate, I think, in football. And there's a lot of people out there now that'll say coverage is more important, or, corners are more important than edge rushers. Coverage is more important than pass rush. I think you could land either way on that and make a convincing case. But the bottom line is, if you can get to the quarterback quicker, it's going to make coverage easier. If you can cover longer, it's going to make getting to the quarterback easier. It's all going to work hand in hand, and I think it's going to benefit Myles Garrett in a big way.
I think the Browns added some playmakers on the defensive side of the ball, so Myles Garrett, you cannot focus all the attention of your offensive line and offense on trying to stop him, because there are now other guys that can hurt you on the Browns defense.
Yeah, he's either going to benefit from it or those other guys are going to benefit from it. And it's not hard to close your eyes and see him hitting a quarterback from the blind side, the ball popping up in the air, and a guy like Owusu-Koramoah grabbing it out of the air and running it to the end zone. We saw Ronnie Harrison do that in Cincinnati last year. He didn't finish the play, but he recovered a fumble and returned it, and it helped the Browns in that shootout. So those are the sorts of things that having those playmakers all over the place. Now when Myles Garrett makes those impact plays, even if he doesn't get the sack, if he just affects the quarterback, all those guys are going to benefit from that too. So I think this definitely benefits Myles Garrett, but I think in the end, we're going to look back on this and say, it was Myles Garrett that made all of those guys better too.
So Pro Football Focus also did their power rankings. Chiefs 1, Buccaneers 2, Bills 3, Packers 4, Ravens 5, Rams 6, and they have the Saints in there at number 7. Browns are 8th again. Saints awfully high given who their quarterback may be, I think.
I can't really get a good read on the Saints because they won last year with Drew Brees at quarterback, and obviously he wasn't throwing the football the way Drew Brees usually does. But at the same time, this is sort of like the Broncos when they won the Super Bowl with that powerful defense, and Peyton Manning was kind of limping along and just getting by. I still think having Peyton Manning's brain back there on that offense helped them. I think the same thing goes for Drew Brees. If you're relying now on maybe Taysom Hill at quarterback, Jameis Winston, who threw 30 interceptions 2 years ago, Jameis has all the talent in the world and by all accounts seems to have a pretty strong work ethic and can be a guy that can get better. But again, he had a 30-30 season a couple years ago. So he's got to improve dramatically to help that Saints offense. So I think that's being a little too, without seeing what they're going to do at quarterback and what that offense is going to look like, I think that's being a little too high on the Saints.
So along with the Super Bowl probability comes with these rankings. They have the Buccaneers 16% chance to win the Super Bowl, Chiefs 15.1, Packers 13.8, Bills 7.5, Browns at 7.0. So Browns fifth most likely, kind of in the same category as the Bills. That seems pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's about where I'd put them. If you're going to put a percentage on the Bills, I'd put the Browns. Maybe somebody's going to make the case they can be a little bit higher than the Bills. It's all going to be about the quarterbacks. If Josh Allen continues to get better, then the Bills are going to be a better football team. If he regresses, then that's a problem. I think the baseline for Baker Mayfield, though, is pretty steady. So I think the Browns are where they are. And then if he takes that next step in year 4, then the sky's the limit with this team. I would raise that percentage a bunch. But right now, without having seen either team play a game, I think it's fair to put them in the same category.
Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe and I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, some power rankings for the defense. That one's from Bleacher Report. We'll also talk about what roles some of the Browns' 2021 draft picks might have. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe. And Dan, the Bleacher Report has ranked the defenses. So power rankings for the defense. Buccaneers is ranked as the top defense. Rams 2, Washington football team 3. I got it right there. Patriots 4, Ravens 5, Dolphins 6. They have the Browns at 7, which that speaks to how impressed they were with the upgrade that Andrew Berry and the front office has done through the draft and via free agency.
If they jumped up to 7, that would be absolutely enormous for this team. Again, we have to throw out that word Super Bowl, right? If they have a top 10 defense like that, the potential is there with all the additions they've made. It's going to get tested early against Kansas City. I think the thing to remember about this defense and really with all NFL teams is you want to hit your stride. You want to play well early in the season, but you want to hit your stride towards the end of the season in November and December. The teams that are playing best towards the end of the year, and the Browns are an example of this, usually win playoff games. Look at the Steelers last year. They started the year great, And then they really went downhill in a hurry, and the Browns blew them out in Pittsburgh in the wild card round. So it might be a little slow with this defense, with the new faces kind of learning what they want to do and how they want to match up to different teams. But I think this thing can really get rolling in the second half of the season. And that's when you start talking about a defense that could land in that number 7 spot.
And think about the versatility. I mean, that's the one thing that has been so impressive. It isn't like they went out and got a guy that can do A. They went out and got a guy that can do A, B, and C. And, oh, by the way, he's really good at all of them.
Right. It's almost like a basketball team. If you have a really deep, well-rounded basketball team where you can look at a matchup and say, okay, we're going to go big against these guys. They can't stop our big guys. We're going to go small and fast against this team. Joe Woods is going to be able to play the matchup game week to week, and we might see a defense that looks different based on not necessarily who they are, but on who they're playing. They might look at Lamar Jackson and say, like the Chargers did a few years ago, we want 7 defensive backs on the field. Or they might look at the Ravens and say, we want to play a base heavy defense and make them run against that. I think they're going to be able to do a lot of creative things, and it's going to be all on Joe Woods and his staff to come up with all the different ways to deploy these guys.
So rookie mini camp wrapped up Sunday a couple days ago. Who are some of the guys? And you wrote a story about this. So let's drive people to go to cleveland.com, read this. Some of the roles for the Browns 2021 draft picks that you could see them fill in.
There's so much variance here, right? So a guy like James Hudson, who just signed today, his ideal role in 2021 is not play, because you don't want anybody on that O-line to get hurt. You want it to be healthy. A guy like Greg Newsome, though, you'd like to see him start eventually. He was the number 26 pick. He was your first round pick. You'd like to see him in the starting lineup at some point, whatever that looks like, whether it's in the slot, whether it's beating out Greedy Williams. You want to see him starting. Same with Owusu-Koramoah. You want to see him on the field a lot, playing that hybrid linebacker, playing a lot of will, which is sort of what he's expecting, I think. Anthony Schwartz is going to be really interesting, how they deploy him. Now, he had some trouble on Friday when we were out there. He had some drop issues. You don't write a guy off after one rookie minicamp. He'll get better. But what's his role going to be? Is it going to be a little more gimmicky, sort of like, what we saw with JoJo Natson last year? Or is he going to be on the field more than we expect? That's one guy that I'm really interested in. And the other guy is Tommy Togiai. I think he's going to play this year. He's not going to start. He's not going to lead the defensive tackle room in snaps. But I think especially by the end of the season, we're going to be talking a lot about Tommy Togiai on the field in key moments.
You mentioned rookie minicamp. What jumped out to you about it? You were out there Friday, the only day that there was media access. What struck you? Who kind of opened your eyes, or just some general reactions to what was going on out in Berea?
Yeah, I think the big thing this year was just kind of getting our eyes on guys, because they only had 18 players there. There was no real practice when we were out there. It was a lot of individual stuff. So it was seeing Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, and he does look like a safety, especially because he's wearing that number 28 number. Not a small safety. He looks like a big safety, and you can kind of see what they want to do with him. He was working with linebackers coach Jason Tarver a lot on his back pedal, change of direction, all of those things. And then it was actually a little interesting. At one point in the practice, they brought Richard LeCount over, and he's a little smaller than Owusu-Koramoah, but they had him working with Jason Tarver a little bit too. And I just wonder if we're going to see some of that crossover when the full roster's together in training camp, if these safeties might come over and work with the linebackers a little bit, because I do think they want to kind of mesh those guys like a John Johnson, a Ronnie Harrison, a Grant Telpett. They want those guys to look and play a little bit like linebackers in spots. So it was really just getting eyeballs, especially on Owusu-Koramoah, to see actually what he looked like in a Browns uniform.
So how fast did Anthony Schwartz look in person?
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get to see him go full speed, but even not going full speed, he was getting down the field in a hurry. So I hope fans are allowed at training camp this year, because he is going to put on a show when he puts the pedal to the floor and turns on that speed. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch him. He might end up, if he can hang on to the football and make some spectacular catches, he might lead training camp in highlights because of that speed.
The other thing is that's a guy that with his speed, you put him on the outside And the defense cannot crowd the box. They have to respect his speed. And that should open some things up for Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, that's exactly what you want. You want to spread the defense out and then run into that defense a little bit because they have less guys in the box, like you were saying. And Schwartz is a guy, I don't know how many snaps he's going to end up playing. I would actually, at this point, just based on the numbers game, I'd be surprised if it was anything more than like 50% of the snaps, 40% of the snaps once the year is done. But you can make those snaps really meaningful because of that speed, because the defense, when they see him come on the field, they know, okay, we've got to keep an eye on this guy. And they're already worried about Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry and whatever tight end is out there. Maybe Kareem Hunt's in the slot even. They've got so many things to worry about. And then this guy with 4.26 speed trots onto the field. You can't cover him with a linebacker. You can't cover him with a safety. Now you've got to really shift guys around, and it could cause some problems.
Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe and I going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Mike Clay from ESPN. 7 reasons why the Browns are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. We'll have that when Sports4CLE returns. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with plain dealer and cleveland.com Browns beat reporter Dan Labbe. So Dan, Mike Clay from ESPN has been kind of the conductor of the Browns hype train this offseason. 7 reasons why he says they are a legitimate Super Bowl contender. 1, ignore the obvious narrative. 2, the young quarterback has a lot of help. We'll get your take every couple of times. So both of those.
The narrative part is interesting because I think the one thing that might keep people from saying, I don't know about the Browns, is the fact that they're the Browns, right? You've got this reputation going back to 1999 that this organization isn't very well run. And the bottom line is that's not true anymore. You've got alignment. You've got people who know what they're doing. You've got great coaching. At some point, you've got to separate the logo and what you think of it from the actual football team that's going to be on the field. And I think that's a really key point to start things off.
Yeah, the Browns didn't work out very well for Juju Smith-Schuster in that playoff game. All right, so Baker Mayfield looks legit is number 3.
And yeah, I mean, if he's the quarterback that we saw from like Thanksgiving on, then yes, he looks legit. And the other thing is, this goes back to that other point. The Browns know how to use him. Kevin Stefanski knows how to use him, and the Browns know how to win football games with him. So even if he's not quite the quarterback we saw in the second half of the season, if he's just really good, the Browns are going to be fine, and they're going to figure out a way to win with Baker Mayfield.
Number 4, Browns defense is the most improved in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be in the running. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure who else would be in that discussion, but you might have 9 of 11 new starters. You addressed it with the first round draft pick. You've got Greedy Williams and Grant Delpit coming back on top of adding all those safeties, improving your linebacking core, beefing up your pass rush. You've added a bunch of basically any defensive tackle who wants to come here. It appears the door is open for him, maybe except for Sheldon Richardson, but we'll see. I can't argue with that.
Kevin Stefanski is an asset, is reason number 5 of 7.
I think this is really a sharp point too, because I think we're learning the players really respond to Stefanski. He's really boring when he talks to the media. It's not like that when he talks to the players. He's not that he's like this fiery, a motivational speech guy, but players want to follow him. And I think he really relates well to the modern NFL player. He's adaptable. These guys trust him. He communicates. I think calling him an asset is perfect. And I think we're going to see over time his ability to develop talent, but also develop young coaches is just going to continue to draw people to this organization.
Remember, he was the NFL Coach of the Year a season ago. All right, right. 6 and 7. AFC can be had, and the schedule is the easiest in the AFC North.
And I think that last point is really important too. The NFL is so much about 2 things: injury luck and the schedule. And I know the AFC North doesn't get the schedule it got last year when they got to play the NFC East. But when you kind of look at it a certain way, so you can look back to last year's records and say, well, this is where the schedule ranks. But I believe it was Warren Sharp tweeted out that the Browns schedule, if you look at betting odds, if you look at win total betting odds right now, is actually among the top 5 easiest. Now, I wouldn't put it necessarily that high just eyeballing it, but I think that's an interesting way to look at it, that the Browns could actually benefit from what some people think was supposed to be a really difficult schedule. And that's important. I don't think there's another professional sports league where the schedule plays more of a role. And if the Browns are a really good team and have a favorable schedule, that's when you start talking 13, 14 wins.
So what do you expect? Things are trending towards getting back to quote-unquote normal. What do you expect training camp to be like here in a couple of months?
I think for players and coaches, it's going to look like what we're used to seeing. It's funny, at rookie minicamp, the NFL sent out a memo that vaccinated coaches didn't need to wear masks anymore. And literally in the middle of practice, these coaches must have gotten word because all the masks came off on the field for the Browns. So I think we're going to see a more normal training camp for players and coaches. And I know in Indianapolis, they're hoping they're going to be able to go to their normal training camp site, which is in Grand Park, Indiana. As far as fans are concerned, I just don't know yet. Now, the Indians are going full capacity here on June 2nd. So I think that's favorable to the Browns being able to have, if not their full complement of fans, to be able to at least set up some bleachers somewhere and have some fans watching training camp. I think by the end of July, we're going to be about as close to normal as we've been since everything shut down, over a year ago. And again, I think players and coaches are going to be in the building. They're going to be having somewhat normal days. I would imagine they'll take advantage of the virtual things they've learned over the last few years and give players a little bit of a mental break. But I think it's going to look more like training camp.
And the Browns fans are going to be ready for it based on the expectations for this season.
Yeah, and I've said that home opener against Houston, that's the perfect home opener because nobody cares about Cleveland versus Houston. That's a meaningless football game. The Browns are going to roll. So it's great. Browns fans can just show up and party all morning in the Muni lot, head over to the stadium. It's just going to be a celebration regardless of what happens against the Chiefs. And if they can have fans at training camp, 2019 was crazy. This year is going to be out of control.
Yeah, it's the Browns version of homecoming week 1 for the week 2 for the home opener. Dan Labbe, Browns beat reporter here for cleveland.com as well as the Plain Dealer. As always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Dan.
Yep, thank you.
All right, Dan Labbe, make sure you read them in the pages of the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out, so we shift focus on the other side of the break. Cavs beat reporter Chris Fedor will join us. We're talking Cavs season. We'll also look ahead. NBA playoffs getting underway tonight. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We shift our focus. We're going to talk Cavs basketball, and we welcome in Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter for the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Chris, tough season for the Cavs. A young team that was kind of ravaged by injuries. The one thing you couldn't have happen pretty much happened to the young Cavs this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at it, Dave, young teams have a hard time winning games to begin with. Right? With youth comes inexperience. With youth comes mistakes. With youth comes growing pains. But a lot of these young teams also rely on their veterans to be the stabilizing forces, the support system around those young guys. And with Kevin Love missing as much time as he did, and Larry Nance Jr. being absent for 3 different stretches, and Matthew Dellavedova missing the first 47 games, it just became really, really difficult, I think, for the Cavs to consistently win games, trotting out the lineups that they were trotting out there. I don't think that means that the season was a failure. I think that just means that in terms of win-loss record, maybe they fell a little bit short of what people around the city wanted from them, or what people thought they could become after getting off to the hot start that they got off to.
Yeah, I mean, at one point in time, we were talking about how they were, close to 500. They were challenging for one of those play-in spots, and then, the injuries just kind of, everything went sideways with it. When you take into account, I think I saw somewhere they had one of the most missed games in the NBA, and that doesn't account for the Andre Drummond where they sat him out because they were trying to trade him.
Right. It was actually the 3rd most in the NBA. I don't remember the other 2 off the top of my head. I think Orlando was certainly up there. Denver was probably in that mix as well. And I think that's what it comes down to, Dave. It's year 3 of a rebuild. So injuries are always going to affect certain teams more than others. And a team like the Cavs, they're going to feel those injuries in a different kind of way. They're not going to be able to deal with those the same kind of way that a team like the Denver Nuggets could, right? Or the Los Angeles Lakers, or any of those kinds of teams that have upper echelon talent that can keep you afloat for longer stretches. Portland missed Yusuf Nurkic for about half the season and CJ McCollum for, I think it was 25 games. But they had somebody like Damian Lillard that could carry them through, just get them through those tough times. The Cavs didn't have those players to get them through the tough times, right? The guy that they were supposed to have was Kevin Love. He's supposed to be that guy for this young team. Instead, that responsibility shifted to Darius Garland and Colin Sexton and Isaac Okoro. And suddenly you're asking these young guys who are still coming into their own to do more than what you initially wanted from them at the beginning of the season, and to do more than what they can actually provide at this stage of their career. So to me, that's really the underlying theme of this entire season, is that we didn't get we didn't get the opportunity to see the Cavs in their own vision. And I don't think they got an opportunity to see what they can truly become moving forward, because how else do you find those answers out without actually, seeing it play out on the court? And it didn't get an opportunity to.
Yeah, and you certainly, nobody wants to hear that, but that's just the reality of it.
Sure.
There's some news that there may be a front office shakeup. Would that surprise you? Is that a possibility? Do you have any idea?
I've spent the last couple of days talking to as many people as I could around the organization, outside the organization. I think a lot of people right now, Dave, are angry, frustrated, whatever term you want to use, based on the way that the Cavs finished the season. Lost 13 in the final 14. If they didn't have that win at home against Boston in the finale, they would have finished the season on a 14-game losing streak. And I think that would have given a lot of pause to the decision makers when it came to evaluating the future of the team, because then the emotions step in. I haven't heard that Kobe Altman is in danger of losing his job. I haven't heard that JB Bickerstaff is in danger of losing his job. But I'll say this, Dave. Dan Gilbert's history is what it is. He's very emotional. He can get antsy. He doesn't often see through these plans, even though it would seem like he's on board with this plan, and he understands that a rebuild is the best possible route for this organization in this market, in the situation that they're in a post-LeBron era. That doesn't mean that he's going to stick with that. So I think a lot of people are just looking at the history of the Cavs and looking at the history of Dan Gilbert and saying, he gets rid of GMs after 4 or 5 years. That means Kobe Altman's on the hot seat. The Cavs won 22 games this year. They lost 50. That means Kobe Altman is on the hot seat, and somebody has to pay the price for that sort of thing. I don't know how real those reports are at this point in time. The people closest to Kobe Altman haven't gotten the sense that he's in trouble. But that could change tomorrow. That could change in a week from now. And like I said, Dan Gilbert's a very emotional guy who sometimes allows his emotions to get the best of him.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Chris and I are going to look at the draft lottery, some of the things that the Cavs have done building, where they may look ahead. We'll also take a quick look into the NBA playoffs, which get underway tonight. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just a mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports4CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Cavs basketball with Cavs beat reporter Chris Fedor. Chris, when you look at the draft lottery, it has not been kind to the Cavs, and you could argue that's kind of how they got into this situation. And nobody in the NBA is feeling sorry for him based on how the ping pong balls bounced with LeBron and Kyrie and even Bennett for that matter. But you look at 2018, 8th pick Colin Sexton. There's nobody that went after him that makes that a mistake pick by any stretch of the imagination. Sexton's probably not a 1 or a 2, but he's a pretty good NBA player.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the way that you have to look at it. If you're going to try and evaluate this front office fairly, Dave, it's just that. With a recognition that they haven't had lottery luck, with a recognition that they haven't passed on some of those quote-unquote stars that could have accelerated this rebuild, I think given where they have drafted, they have done the best that they could do. Some people might argue Michael Porter Jr. ignoring the fact that he was coming off back surgery. There were questions about his longevity in the NBA, his work ethic, whether or not he was an alpha, all those different kinds of things. And some people might also say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, ignoring the fact that 1, he didn't want to play here, 2, he wasn't willing to work out here, and 3, Colin Sexton statistically has been better than Shai. The only difference between the two is size. Shai's 6'6", Colin's 6'1". But given where they were drafting, they got it right. He's 22nd in the NBA in scoring this year. His numbers in year 3 are comparable to Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets and Donovan Mitchell of the Utah Jazz at the same stage of their career. And then you can go down and do the same thing when it comes to Darius Garland. Sure, Dave, at one point last year, we were talking about Darius as a potential draft bust. What the heck were the Cavs thinking, taking him 5th overall? He's statistically the worst player in the NBA. And here he is in year 2, made huge strides. And now we can look at him and honestly say that through 2 years, he's been one of the best players from the 2019 draft class. So with them picking him at 5, who else after him would you rather have? Rui Hachimura, Tyler Hero, Matisse Thybulle, Cam Reddish, Jarrett Culver? There isn't that guy that you can look at and say, well, because the Cavs took Darius instead of X player, it was a big whiff. It would be one thing, Dave, if we were sitting here today talking about Kevin Knox instead of Colin Sexton and Cam Reddish instead of Darius Garland. But we're not. We're talking about a general manager who, to this point, wherever the Cavs were picking, I think you can make an argument, made the most of those picks, or if you want to go further, hit on those picks. So what are we even talking about his future in this organization for? Why are we even saying that he's not safe?
Yeah, I would agree. And you can say the same thing about Isaac Okoro thus far. I mean, would you like him to have more offense? Absolutely. Showed flashes of it late in the year. An athletic guy that's a willing defender. Again, you're picking 5th. There's nobody behind him that you go, boy, that guy's a can't-miss superstar.
Right. They didn't pass on LaMelo Ball or Anthony Edwards for Isaac Okoro. They took Isaac at 5th. And part of the reason why they took him was because they recognized, hey, look, we have a tiny backcourt. It's Darius Garland, it's Colin Sexton. There are limitations to what they can be defensively. We have seen that now. How do we address that? Sure, part of it is Darius becoming a better defender and Colin becoming a better defender. But the other thing is you've got to put the pieces around those guys so that they can be in a position to not be exploited on the defensive end of the floor. And because they're liabilities on their own, let's try and help them out. So let's go out and get the best pure wing defender in this year's class in Isaac Okoro. And he took the challenges throughout the course of this season, Dave, that very few rookies are going to take. You know, did Anthony Edwards guard LeBron James one night, then Kawhi Leonard the next night, then Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and Russell Westbrook, and the list goes on and on and on. Very few rookies were asked to do what the Cavs asked of Isaac. And that was part of their developmental plan for him. They wanted to throw him to the wolves, so to speak, and see if he could handle it and see what he was going to learn and see if he could be better for it. That's why it was always so hard for me to criticize Okoro throughout the course of his rookie season. Number one, he was really, really young coming into the season. He didn't have summer league. He didn't have a full off season. And he was asked to do things that you don't normally ask of rookies. And he had some failures and he had some successes. And I think that's what you expect from the 5th overall pick in this type of season.
Without question. As you look at it, what position do you think would kind of set up for them nicely if they're able to get an elite guy in this year's draft lottery?
Yeah, so I don't even think it's necessarily a position, right? I think we focus on guard and forward and center, and we talk about that all the time. To me, Dave, it's a skill set. What they need more than anything else is a playmaking wing with two-way potential and size. And the person that fits that is obviously Cade Cunningham in this year's draft. There's no team in the NBA that needs Cade Cunningham more than the Cavs. There is no team that needs the 1st overall pick quite like the Cavs, so that they can finally get the centerpiece of this rebuild. They have guys that they can build with. They need the guy that they can build around. And not only is Cade more talented than anybody that the Cavs currently have on the roster and can be the guy moving forward, but he's exactly what this team needs to take that next step. Take pressure off of Colin, take pressure off of Darius, provide some size on the wing, two-way potential, all those different things. There is no better match than Cade Cunningham to the Cavs.
So all they need is the ping pong balls to line up correctly on an NBA. Hey, well, you know what? They're due for a little bit of good luck. Real quickly, let's look to the playoffs. Some teams that you think are threats and maybe a dark horse.
In the East, obviously, a lot of people are going to talk about Brooklyn. Look, they've got 3 of the 10, 15 best players in the NBA on the same team. Maybe 20 best players if you're not as big of a fan as Kyrie Irving as some people are. So I think you have to start there in the Eastern Conference, despite the fact that Philly is the number 1 seed and I think a very formidable opponent. I think Miami stylistically is going to be a handful in a playoff environment. We saw that last year in the bubble. They're a completely different team with Jimmy Butler on the court. So I guess if you want to call them a dark horse, you could probably call them that, because a lot of people are talking about Philly, Milwaukee, Brooklyn. I think Miami can make a deep run from, the Eastern Conference bottom half. And then out West, can you call the Lakers a dark horse? Probably not. But they're heading into this thing as a team that has to fight their way in because they're part of the play-in tournament first and foremost. And I'll never count out a LeBron James-led team when he's got a top 5-10 player on his side. You got to beat that team 4 times in 7 tries. But I think the Clippers, to me, are the best, deepest team in the Western Conference. And I think they learned a lot from their bubble failures, and it would not be a surprise if they found a way to the NBA Finals over the Lakers.
Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter here on cleveland.com, as well as in the Plain Dealer. As always, Chris, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff. I'm sure we'll be bugging you throughout the summer. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, Chris.
It's a critical offseason for the Cavs, so we got a lot to talk about moving forward, Dave. That's for sure.
All right. Chris Fedor, Cavs beat reporter. Make sure you read him in the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. That'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you again tomorrow, 4 o'clock. Scheduled guest Tom Withers from the Associated Press, as well as Tim Bielek. We'll be talking plenty of Browns on Sports4CLE tomorrow at 4. We'll see you then. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.